The movies I watched in June, what about them? From multiple legacy sequels to modern remakes, and from straight up classics to disappointing new releases. Let's get into it! Please help your favorite average movie guy get to 1,000 subscribers by subscribing right now. Karate Kid Legends 3 out of 5. I started my month with a cinema visit to the new Karate Kid film, which follows Kung Fu prodigy Li Fang, who relocates from Beijing to New York and teams up with his Kung Fu teacher Mr. Han and the original Karate Kid, Daniel LaRusso. Karate Kid Rocky. It is an enjoyable, albeit very predictable entry into the franchise. It has some cool fight scenes, a good lead performance, and a very entertaining dynamic between LaRusso and Mr. Han. However, it has such a weird first act that took so long for a film with such a short runtime. That waste of time meant that we were not given enough time with LaRusso and Han together, which was a massive shame. A Few Good Men, 5 out of 5. Next up, I watched this classic on Prime Video, where two Marines on trial for murder rely on a determined lawyer to uncover the truth behind a deadly order. I love me a legal drama, and this is up there for sure. It pretty much has it all: a good setup, giving you just enough, intrigue, ups and downs, and some great performances. Cruz is especially great in a role that is very similar to other roles in this era of his career, which he plays oh so well. However, everyone is great, to be honest. A brilliant cast with a strong supporting role for Nicholson, who is on his asshole A-game here. The film is actually also very funny due to Kaffee's lack of knowledge of the Navy and the situations that creates. However, what works best for a film like this is some very strong and clever dialogue. The witty remarks and especially that final courtroom scene are just absolutely amazing. The end. Ballerina, 4 out of 5. Next up, I watched this new film in the John Wick franchise at the cinema, where Eva Maccaro, a ballerina turned assassin trained by the Rosca Roma, embarks on a vengeful mission to avenge her father's murder. It is a very worthy spin-off. Honestly, there's not much bad to say. It is a little repetitive and obviously predictable, but it's just a great action film. There is plenty of amazing action. It goes from scene to scene, with each being mostly different from the other. The film also has some cool and inventive camera work, a good use of John Wick, and obviously a gorgeous woman kicking ass on screen. What's not to like? However, the film does lack some character depth and emotion, but that is a gripe with all John Wick films, to be honest. Lilo and Stitch, 4 out of 5. Next, I watched this film at the cinema, where a lonely Hawaiian girl and a rogue alien form an unlikely bond while evading galactic pursuers. I can't remember most of the originals, so the film already had that going for it in comparison to other Disney remakes. I was incredibly surprised and fully invested throughout. It is a pretty engaging film with always something going on, albeit a little bit repetitive. The CGI is pretty decent as well for most of it. However, what got me the most was how funny and especially emotional it was. It truly had me in my feelings for a couple moments. The villains could also have been a bit better, as the lack of real tension was very clear, but the heartfelt emotion carries the film to heights. Mostly due to that little girl's acting, she was pretty amazing. While Stitch brings you to the theater and is great, the film has way more going for it. Happy Gilmore, 1.5 out of 5. Next up, I watched this film on Netflix. A sequel is coming up. About a hot-headed hockey player who turns golfer to win prize money and save his grandmother's house. To be honest, he should be in jail 10 times over in this film. It is way less funny than I expected. There is way too much unfunny physical humor. The story is interesting and entertaining, albeit very shallow and predictable, but it is led by an incredibly unlikable protagonist. At least the villain is played okay, but I have no clue why this film is liked so much, to be honest. 28 weeks later, 3 out of 5. Next up, I watched the second film in the Now trilogy to get ready for the new one, where a new outbreak of the rage virus devastates London just as survivors begin to rebuild. It is very much a natural continuation of what came before in a way. The film has a great opening scene setting up a great theme, which the rest of the film couldn't always live up to. It is full of illogical stupidness in order to set up the plot, which is just a shame, because the action, tension and horror are unsurprisingly well done. Even though the same shaky camera work is again back, maybe to a lesser degree, which adds to the aesthetic but simply makes it harder to follow. Within the zombie genre, it definitely stands out as not being bad at all. Materialists, 2.5 out of 5. Next up, I watched this film at the cinema about a hard-nosed NYC matchmaker torn between a perfect on-paper billionaire and her emotionally rich ex. It's a bad message, but also not a great film in itself. It is a beautifully shot film with okay performances and interesting themes, but not much of a plot. It feels a bit messy by trying to tell two different stories which don't always fit together. It is also way too slow for what it wants to be, especially in the first half, but it's not necessarily boring. The second half got me a bit more, but the emotions there could have hit way harder if the first half did a better job. I didn't watch any trailers, nor did I have any expectations, but even I was somewhat disappointed by the final product. How to Train Your Dragon, 3.5 out of 5. Next up, I watched this film at the cinema, where a young Viking bonds with a dragon and changes his world forever. That music is just awesome, it gave me absolute chills. The world itself does also look gorgeous, with most of the effects being pretty good. Furthermore, all scenes with Hiccup and Toothless are just incredible, especially the taking flight scene with all the music and everything going on. However, I didn't much care about any of the other characters, to be honest. I felt that it took me a little while to get into it, while the ending also didn't feel entirely fulfilling. However, everything in between was pretty great and enjoyable to watch. 28 years later, 2 out of 5. Next up, I watched this film at the cinema, where survivors from a quarantined island venture into a mutated post-virus mainland UK. From one of the best trailers of all time to this film, what a fumble. It's sad to say, but that was disappointing to say the least. It didn't live up to the hype in the slightest, in my opinion. There are some highs. Alfie Williams is very good as the unexpected lead. It is beautifully shot, with the sound design and editing also being cool, albeit a bit weird and out of place sometimes. And when the infected were there, it was pretty awesome and filled with tension. There was just not enough of it, feeling as if the horror was missing a bit. However, there are some massive issues here. The story is a hot mess. It is as if two different stories were put in the same film with a weird tagline at the end. Apart from the different stories, it is also very odd in terms of tone. It shifts from tense and serious to emotional to funny and outright goofy. The film also doesn't really make sense within the franchise anymore, contradicting some of what has come before. I feel like the first half just worked better. It is a bit more standard, but it just works. And they should have built on it. Now it looks as if Garland and Boyle probably had no idea what to do with these two different stories. Incredibles 2, 4.5 out of 5. Next up, I watched this sequel with my girlfriend, where Elastigirl leads a public campaign to legalize superheroes, while Mr. Incredible stays home amidst a tech-savvy villain's sinister plot. While it is somewhat familiar, it is even better than the first film. The score and animation are just as great. There are some really cool and thought-out fight scenes in here, with the amazing score accompanying them. However, I felt that the switch in the story was better in this one and led to a more interesting dynamic. Elastigirl was a more likable protagonist than Mr. Incredible, while Mr. Incredible looking after the family was way more interesting than Elastigirl doing it in the first film. The only minor letdown is the weaker and predictable villain. G20, 1 out of 5. Next up, I watched this film on Prime Video, where global leaders face high-stakes crises behind closed doors. At least they got paid. It is dumb, there's awful dialogue, there's cliché after cliché, there's bad humor and so many fake deaths. It is just not worth anyone's time. At the very least, it was R-rated with some interesting action in between all the badly shot scenes. The Life of Chuck, 4.5 out of 5. Next up, I watched this film at the cinema, which follows one man's life in reverse, from his death to his childhood, revealing beauty in ordinary moments. Flanagan can do more than horror. It isn't so much a story, it is more a feeling, a thought. It makes you think about life, how life is your universe. And when your life ends, so does your universe. I went in completely blind, so I was a little confused at the beginning, but it still all falls together really well in the end. Every act really works on its own, but the emotion of Act 3 could have hit a bit more if it was placed somewhere else in the story. I am not always into films like these, but this worked. It really tells a whole life story in just a few scenes, which is quite impressive. The performances, the visuals and the dancing are also great. I also don't often like a lot of narration, but it just did add a lot here, or it might just be Nick Offerman's voice. And lastly, for a Flanagan fan like me, there were many cameos to enjoy as well. F1 the movie, 4.5 out of 5. My last watch of the month was also at the cinema, which followed a retired driver who returns to mentor a rising star and revive a failing Formula 1 team. Racing has never looked this good. Kaczynski did it again. The story isn't as predictable as you might expect. It is predictable in general, but it subverts your expectations a lot along the way. However, what it offers most is the visuals. The cinematography was just chef's kiss, amazing, which worked perfectly along with the amazing score and songs. The story isn't just the visuals, the characters are also somewhat rich. Pitt is great in the lead role with some strong supporting performances, especially from Carrie Condon. The film also had some great pacing, keeping me engaged throughout. To be honest, just go and experience this for yourself. It's an amazing cinema experience. And that's it for my movie watches this month. These were my best and worst watches of the month. I hope you guys again enjoyed me rambling about the films I watched, and if you did, let me know in the comments below and be sure to subscribe for more videos like these. I have been Dean, the average movie guy on your screen. Big thanks for watching. See you next time. Roll the credits.